If you've ever wondered why communication theory feels like a gigantic mix of psychology, sociology, philosophy, and media studies, well, that's really because it is. These traditions help us map the terrain, all within communication. Welcome back to Communication Campus. I'm Dr. Malynnda Stewart, and today we are going to unpack one of the most influential frameworks in our field. This is known as the 7 Traditions of Communication Theory, developed by Robert Craig in 1999. Let's dig in. Craig argued that communication isn't a single discipline. It's more like a dialogue across traditions. Each tradition offering a different way of thinking about communication. By grouping these theories into 7 different traditions, we can better understand their assumptions, their goals, and their methods. So let's take a tour of these 7 traditions with by exploring each of its own ways of understanding the question, what is communication? The first stop on our tool is the Sociopsychological tradition. This tradition is probably the most scientific of all of them. It sees communication as the process of influence and persuasion between individuals. Researchers here focus on cause and effect. For example, elaboration likelihood model. This model explains how people are persuaded based on whether they take central or peripheral routes. Whether that communication is coming through the front door and we see that persuasion really coming right at us, or if it kind of sneaks in the back. It's something far more subtle. We don't even think about the ways that we're being persuaded. That's a peripheral route. So here we are thinking about attitudes, ways to seek and persuade people to change their behaviors. We're going to be looking for variables. And again, we want to be able to make predictions. So here's your little pop quiz. Knowing that we are looking for variables and we are trying to make predictions, which of the frameworks that we talked about in the last episode are applying? Is this an objective, an interpretive, or a critical theory? Hopefully, you could identify and make the connections that when we are looking to make predictions, we are doing an objective theory. We are looking at the world to identify key truths from a predictive standpoint, which means the objective standpoint. So next we have the cybernetic tradition. Now, no, we are not talking about cyber communication here. We're talking about the ways systems work. Now, communication is understood as information processing within a system. So we have feedback loops. We have to consider noise, and we're thinking about control. You'll soon see when we talk about Shannon Weaver's transition model that within communication, specifically organizational communication, there are networks of ways that people and organizations communicate with and across each other. So within this tradition, we're really looking at feedback. How is that information that we sent out given back to us? How quickly does it work? We're looking at the whole systems, not just one or two individual pieces. We're looking at how all of those pieces work together. Again, this is thinking about control, our signal, our noise. And looking at all of these things, my question to you, what do you think? Is this going to be more objective? Is this open to interpretation? Or are we looking to critique and push back? I'll let you look that one up in your reading for this week. Next, we have the rhetorical tradition. Here, communication is the art of public discourse. It is how speakers use language and persuasion to shape meaning and mobilize audiences. This goes all the way back to Aristotle, but it also includes contemporary rhetorical and discourse analysis. So a lot of this tradition is focusing on persuasion, our style, not our clothing style, but the styles and the ways that we communicate, our arguments, and most importantly, our audience. How do we convince our audience to listen to us, but also to engage in what we are saying and possibly make some better decisions? Our semiotic tradition is all about the process of sign making and meaning sharing. This is all about how signs, like words, symbols, even emoticons, create meaning within this whole process. Some scholars work on mythologies, like Stuart Hall, and the way that Hall talks about encoding, decoding models are just one of the parts of this tradition. Here we are looking at signs and codes, and we are thinking about meaning systems and cultural symbols. So since we are focusing on meaning making and the ways that we are sharing meaning, I hope that you're recognizing that this is an interpretive framework and an interpretive tradition. We're almost done. Site number 5, tradition number 5, is the sociocultural tradition. Here we are seeing communication as the creation and enactment of social reality. Language doesn't just reflect reality, it's really helping to construct it. This will become very apparent in the Sphere-Whorf linguistic reality framework, or in Berger and Luckman's social constructionism of reality. Again, here we are looking at the interpretations of the world around us. We're looking at culture, identity, social norms, even language communities. Number 6, this is about power and emancipation. We have, of course, the critical tradition. Communication isn't neutral. It often reproduces injustice, and critical theorists want to expose and challenge those areas of injustice. So examples are going to include Marxist media critique, feminist theory, and even Stuart Hall's cultural studies. Within this tradition, we again are looking at power, oppression, ideology, and resistance. So hopefully you're making those connections and going, this is going to be a critical approach, so we know what type of framework we are looking at here. And last but certainly not least, and honestly it's kind of my favorite, the phenomenological tradition. This one is deeply personal. It focuses on lived experiences and the authentic dialogue between people. Here, scholars of this tradition explore how people experience meaning and in the context that that meaning is created. Like Martin Buber's I-thou relationship and how we use and think about people as either I or thou. Again, we're going to get into that in just a few weeks. So here the focus is again on that experience. We're talking about dialogue, empathy, and consciousness. So you guessed it, this is an interpretive tradition. How do these traditions actually help us? I want you to think of them as lenses. If you are studying Instagram, for example, if you wanted to take the role or the chair of a sociopsychological scholar, you might test how hashtags affect engagement. If you are going to look at this from a semiotic perspective, you might decode the meaning behind selfies. Or, if you wanted to take a critical approach, you might ask whose bodies are privileged within the algorithm. One topic, many questions, and many different lenses that you can apply. The key thing to remember here is, again, none of them are the right theory or the right framework. It really depends on what questions you want to ask. Any of these traditions can really be applied to just about any topic, but they shape, remember, there are those maps that guide us through getting the answers that we want. And so it's really important to think about, what is my goal? What is it that I want to understand about the world, about communication, about a certain situation? Because that question then guides which of these traditions you're going to want to use and apply. You're not going to necessarily want to start with the transition and then try and shoehorn it onto your topic. Let it be organic, let it be natural, let it be, these are the things that I want to know, and therefore, these are the decisions I need to make. That's the better guide. I had a professor when I was in grad school tell me to research what pisses me off. And I took that advice very seriously, because that is what guided every research decision I made for quite a few years. And it influenced the decisions that I've made to do things beyond my academic career. So start with the questions that really are at your core. You really want to know the things that, piss you off. Because as you're hunting and trying to figure out those answers, that's going to be a good guide point to help you decide which of these transitions you want to use. You can use these 7 traditions to locate where and how a theory fits, to better understand scholarly debates, or even combine perspectives in your own work. I love combining theories, combining my methods to get a clearer picture and understanding of what is happening around me. I commonly use interpretive and critical traditions in the work that I do, because a lot of the work that I'm doing is about understanding experiences and thinking about how we can change systems of injustice. All right, to wrap this up today, we talked about the 7 traditions that show us that there is no one way to study communication. Each of these traditions is a voice in an ongoing conversation. Each of these traditions is a voice in an ongoing conversation. It's about how humans connect, persuade, resist, and most importantly, relate to each other. Now, next time on Communication Campus, we're going to zoom in on this rhetorical theory. This is the oldest and richest traditions in our field. Thank you for continuing to learn with me. I am Dr. Malynnda Stewart, and I'll see you next class.